luckily this is not my first time seeing it, and I'm sure for most of you it's not the first time either, so I can collect myself to get to the next really juicy part of this evening, where we introduce to you the wonderful Raymond Santana. Before you welcome him, I just wanted to say we've been running the film festival this is our 13th year, and I've really felt like, thank you. And I've really felt like the last 12 years have almost led up to this evening. I was just speaking to someone in the audience briefly, and she said exactly what we all think, that our celebrities are not the people who are just in the big lights for no reason. Our celebrities are people who have really fought through adversity, and they use the fire of that adversity to light the way for others. So before I invite Raymond on, I just wanted to share a little mantra that we share with you. It comes from a wisdom verse, and the other version says, the saints overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and love not their lives to the death. And at IWillTell, we say it slightly differently. We say, and so the people who had bought into a culture of silence caught a revelation. They saw love pouring for the heart of God, and they heard the power of the truth spoken in their own voice. They stood without fear and without shame. They fought for the right to say their own words and name their own world, and they got the victory. And the amazing thing about the incredibly difficult experiences that Raymond and the rest of the Exonerated 5 have experienced is just that they've shown us the way to overcome. So without much further ado, please welcome Raymond Santana.
Sorry about that. Have to stop. It's on? You can hear me, right? Sorry I have your shirt on. I apologize.
So we have so much to go through. This is going to be a really interactive session. You will see that Raymond just really wants to share his heart. So I'll kick us off with a few questions, but I'll try not to hug the limelight. There are stewards either side with mics, and so if you've got questions, comments, and I'm sure you all have many, just take the opportunity to ask them as we go along. But Raymond, we'll just start with an overview, I guess. I know you've seen this quite a few times. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the first time you saw it, and if there's anything different from the time you're looking at it now.
The first time I saw it was in LA at Netflix headquarters, and we were all together, except for Antron. Antron couldn't make it because at that time, Linda had just passed. So he couldn't make the trip. So we watched it, the four of us watched it together, and it was very emotional. Because at the time, we thought we knew everything about each other. And so here we were walking into this production thinking, well, we're the five, we got a handle on the story, on the narrative, we control it. And when we watched the final piece, it was things that we didn't know about each other. So it was at that moment that we had to take a step back and kind of regroup as the brothers. And so it was very emotional. And we had great dialogue after that. We had great conversations after that. And we left that LA trip being stronger. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the brotherhood, because it's one that was forced upon you. You literally didn't know each other at all.
That's right.
But that force of adversity has actually created something quite beautiful and quite unique. Do you want to share a bit more just about how you all really get on behind the scenes?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know Antron, didn't know Yusuf, didn't know Corey or Kevin. As you see in the film, Corey and Yusuf are the only ones who had a real relationship. And so here we were going through this battle with the system, and we became extremely tight from there, except for Corey, because as you see in the film, Corey was older, so he went to adult facilities early, and we really didn't know where he was at. We didn't know what was happening with him until after exoneration. And so, Corey came back, and he wasn't a whole. We had, in those dialogues, we had to really sit down and talk to him, and he said it. He said, at the end of the day, everybody was able to move on with their lives and build families, and he didn't know how to do that, right? And so he always felt like he was the one that was left out. He was the one that was left behind. And the brotherhood became extremely tighter then because it was like we can't move forward without him. So we got to wait for him, and we got to help him to try to move forward. And that's where it really started to really gel. It really started to gel, the brotherhood. Yeah.
So it's quite a journey, right? You're 1989, you're 14 years old, suddenly accused of rape, and the entire world seems to be against you. You served 7 years in prison, and then you had to wait another 6 years. There was actually a time when you went back in, which we'll talk about as well. So you had to wait another 6 years before you could be exonerated, and then another 11 years.
That's correct.
Before the civil suit was settled. So basically, the core part of your formative life was stolen.
Yes, that's correct.
How do you come back from something like that and still be as strong and as generous and as gracious as you are?
For me, I didn't know how to come back. That's why I stumbled so many times when I went back and forth to prison, because I just didn't know how to loosen that grasp that the system had on me. And it wasn't until exoneration that, well, it really wasn't until the doc. Once we got the doc, once we were able to do the documentary with Ken Burns and Sarah Burns and David McMahon, we started to figure out that we had a voice and that we can utilize that voice. And then that became the journey of channeling the energy. So, we have our days when we wake up, we're upset, we're bitter, we're mad. But for me, I always knew how to channel the energy. And me channeling the energy was fighting back against the system. Doing things to show them that we're still alive, that we're still here, that we're still fighting, and that you got to deal with us forever. And that became part of the healing process. Yeah. You
went from being the hated boys of the Central Park 5 to, America, the world's darlings, right?
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely take that. Definitely.
So like I said, I can go on, but I'm sure, can I just have a show of hands for people who are ready with questions and comments? Are you still collecting yourselves? Anybody want to go? So we'll start, I think, if we just start with this lady here, and we'll keep moving.
Hi there. Just want to say it's an absolute privilege to be in this room with you today. You are the strongest person I've ever seen in my whole entire life. Definitely deserve that round of applause. And you give me a lot of strength day to day, just seeing you on the Netflix documentary and seeing everything that you do for other people. Mm-hmm. Anyway, enough about that. I've noticed you've got a very unique relationship with Ava. And I'm massively into films myself, so I'd love to hear more about that, because it seems like you've got a gorgeous connection. So yeah, if you could just talk about that, that'd be amazing.
As you know, as we heard already, I was the one that sent out the tweet to Ava, because I went to see Selma, and in Selma there's this part where Loretta is confronting Dr. King about the recordings, about the women in his life. And watching that, I was kind of like, who has the nerve to put that out there like that? Who has the guts? And I went back and I did my research on Ava. And from that, I said, this is the person that has to tell our story. Because we have to control the narrative. And we have to put it forth as truth. Not that somebody just takes our story and just does whatever they want with it. Because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to put the truth out there for people to finally really see what really happened to the Central Park 5 during that time period. And so I put the tweet out there. First, I started following her on Twitter, and she started following me back. So I thought that was a win, right? And so one day I was just sitting there, and I was like, you know what? I just got to take this shot. I got to take the chance. And I tweeted, and then she retweeted it. So I was in my house just jumping around in the living room, like going crazy. And people were like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, Ava retweeted my tweet. But everybody's like, oh, whatever. And so she DM'd me. So she slid in my DM and she sent me this message. And the message was basically like, nobody has the rights to your film. And I said, well, I'm waiting on you. Because we had several offers from other people. But I felt like she was going to bring that dynamic of being serious and wanting to really tell the truth, right? She was going to be fully invested. And she came to New York maybe about 30, 60 days later. We had a great conversation. at dinner. And then she said, can I meet the rest of the fellas? And I said, yeah, but this is how we have to do it. And when it came to Corey, and I explained how you have to approach Corey, and she was really like, you serious? And I'm like, yeah, this is how you have to do it. Like, you have to go to Corey, and you have to talk to him like he's the only person in the room. Because he has been felt left out for so long, right, that you have to welcome him in. And she went and she did it, and she was like, wow, so there was the trust that we started to develop between me and Ava. And then from there, I mean, she was transparent. She was an open book. I read the script first. I got to give my input on what to put in and what not. I got to sit in some of the editing sessions, the coloring, and now we have our own group chat, and Ava's in our group chat. So she has become like that big sister who's always watching, who always gives her input, who calls, what are you doing? What's going on? You know, and the relationship continues. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with the world. Words can't really comprehend the things that you've had to live through and still be here to stand so strong. So just really want to thank you for that. Following on from the last question, how difficult was it for you to see things on screen that you maybe didn't want to be on screen? And how much was left out?
It was very difficult, but I got to read the script first. So I was able to kind of brace myself. But when I finally watched it, it was very difficult. It was very difficult. And what you see in the Corey episode, it's a lot is left out, right? Because he has a 13 and a half year, almost 14-year period of being in prison. So a lot of that stuff is left out. But there are other things that are left out in the film, but the meat and potatoes is still there. The main points are still there. And so that's what we worried about. Everything else, it was all right, to be left out.
Tell us a bit about what it was like being on set and having the actors represent your childhood, the one that was taken away.
I mean, it was awesome to sit there and watch actors prepare and get ready. Like Michael K. Williams, that's the scene that you see where he's on his bed and he's sick, and Antron walks in, and I happened to watch that scene when they were shooting it, and I can only watch it in one take, because Michael gets prepared, and when he goes into character, it's like you're actually in the room, and I'm watching him, and I knew Bobby personally, so I couldn't watch it after that, but it was an experience to see these actors go in and go into these characters. I mean, even down to when you sit in the editing process and you watch how they do the editing and you go, wow, that's how it's done? And they're like, yeah, it's that, but it's a lot of work. And some of these jobs are just as important as the actors. So it's an appreciation all across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. We had, there was a question around here. If I just take... I'll take you next. This lady honestly was just before you, and I'll take you in the blue top next. Thank you.
Yes,
Right, I follow you like crazy, and I'm just,
Hold the mic a bit closer.
I'm just gutted that what you guys have gone through, but you've come through so strong, all of you. I know you've had your ups and downs, but how have you because there's Dr. Yusuf Salam, he does his bit, you are just, I can't even see, you're my hero. And King Corey, I root for him constantly, and everyone else, and Kevin Richardson and Antron. How do you ever go back to those days where you think, where you don't want to just talk about it anymore, go on social media, because you brought a lot on social media.
Yes.
And I know, because you must probably get crap loads of comments from me, but you don't know who I am. My picture's not on there. My picture is not on there. But yeah, it's me though.
Now
yeah.
I know.
Yeah. When I see a new shirt, I'm like, I want it. That's mine. But really, you've just constantly succeeded and helped and used social media as your platform. And is there any time you just want to just take time out and think, forget it, I don't want to do it anymore?
I think about that a lot. I think about when the time comes that it's finally over. and we could just say, you know, now we could play with the kids and ride off into the sunset. But we have taken on a new direction, right? Where once we found our voices, we had to utilize our voices and our platform, and then we had to start reaching out to the kids, because now we start to see like this is a continuous cycle that keeps going, and we trying to stop it. And so, will it ever? I mean, 44 years old. Like, I think that now we can't let it go. Like when they gave us the name of the Central Park Five, you know, the reason why I went back to prison was because I hit that rock bottom state where I just felt like they're never gonna let this go. I'm gonna go to my grave, and I'm always gonna be Raymond Santana, one of the Central Park Five. And so now that I'm Raymond Santana, one of the Exonerated Five, and it has become a badge, I can't let it go. And we have taken on a new meaning of trying to help our children, our kids of the world. And that's a complex problem. And it takes more than just the five of us to bring a solution. And so for me, I'm always thinking about what's the next medium, what's the next tool that we can use to combat against this criminal justice system. So I think that it won't stop.
And a message for Corey, he finally got certified. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah,
Yes,
okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
fought for
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh, you
Thank
did?
you. Yeah, yeah. I had the riot going. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And the lady in blue at the back.
Okay, I'd like to know what was the impact of Trump's intervention in your case at
Well-
the time?
The impact of?
Donald Trump's intervention in your case at the time.
Okay.
And your commentary in terms of Trump being president now, and whether you believe that another great injustice like you've endured and your colleagues, you know, your friends have endured, would replicate again now.
Okay, let's get to the first question. All right, so Trump. So Trump's impact was that he put out the $85,000 page in the ads in the newspaper calling for the death penalty. Now, what Trump did was that he also became the fire starter to make it seem like it was okay for people to issue death threats. We all received death threats. Our names and our addresses was printed in the newspaper, right? So there was a constant mail coming in of death threats. There is a letter that Yusuf still carries with him to this day, and it says 30 years from now, right? It introduces who these people are, what organization they represent, and it says 30 years from now, someone's gonna walk up on you and they're gonna tap you on your shoulder, and when you turn around, you will know what this is. And this is the 30th, you know, now we're in this 30th year now. And so that's what Trump did. Trump made it okay for people to want to hurt us, to want to lynch us. I mean, they called for castration, they called for the death penalty. People called for our deaths, and he made it okay to do that. That was his role, as you see, as he still does today. Yeah. Now, you had another part of the question, right?
So the second part of the question is in terms of whether you believe that a significant injustice like you've endured would happen again under Trump.
Oh, I mean, definitely. It's happening right now with immigration. Immigration is the same thing. Like, he comes in and he says, you know, he puts out this ideology that Mexicans are coming here to commit crimes, right? And that they're rapists and murderers. And he criminalizes them, and he makes society look at them a certain way. And so now when they start to come across the border and they detain them, right, everybody turns their back. It's the same thing that happened to us in 1989. It's just happening now to a group of people that he has selected to finance a budget. Because all those people have to, when you house them, somebody has to get paid to house these people in these facilities. These, you know, they call them what? Immigration centers? They're prisons. It's the same thing. And that's what he has done today.
So of course, the comments such as that are really supported by what's happening in the media, and the media really turned on you quite heavily. You said there were more than 400 articles written against you in 2 weeks, and just bizarre representations of your faces in court and so on. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and particularly about representation of sort of black and underrepresented groups? So black and Latino in the States, we call them BAME out here in London. Just that kind of representation in media.
Yeah, I mean, back in 1989, there were 400 articles written on us within the first 2 weeks of this case, dissecting the lives of 14 and 15-year-old kids. And what they was doing was they was painting this picture. And so our community was saying, you know what? These guys was doing all this stuff. Maybe they did do it, and they turned their backs on us, even down to family members. And when you do that, the system is allowed at that point to do whatever they want to you because nobody cares. There's no support system to help you. And for us, the black media was very few. There was maybe 2 to 3 papers that wrote the truth. Everybody else wrote these outrageous headlines as wild and urban terrorists, which went on to support the '94 crime bill, because that was done on the backs of us. And so this is what we had to deal with back then. And also, when we get to court now, because cameras weren't allowed into the courtroom, they had these sketch artists that would come in and they would sketch us. And even the sketch artists who apologized years later, when you looked at some of those sketches, we were made to look like creatures. So you didn't see us on news, but when they showed that painting, you was like, wow, they look pretty wild, right? They look really like they must have been doing something. And so that was part of the criminalization, to have people say, well, they must be guilty of something, which that narrative can still stick to this day, because there are people out there who say, well, they didn't do the rape, but they must have did something, and they just can't let it go.
Okay, we have quite a few hands, so gosh. I saw yours first, so we'll go with you.
Hello. Welcome to the Grove. This is my neighborhood, and I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, we're here.
So I wanted to ask something really important. Like the mothers, I know your mother passed away.
Yes.
Yeah. But your father was a massive support. So how did the parents? What happened with the mothers? How did they survive after you guys coming out of prison? Because obviously there was further, experiences to go through, your recovery, post-traumatic stress, whatever. So how were the mothers coping? They were really amazing women. Like those were the characters that I felt that really were incredible.
No, they really were, and I mean, they really are. And here it is, like Corey's mom, I remember watching an interview with her, and she says, you took my son, and the person who has come back, I don't know who he is. You have changed him. And parents had to deal with that. For me, with my dad, here I came back, I was a bigger person, I ate much more food, and in my mind, I didn't have a job, so I felt like I became this burden on my dad, and all he was trying to do was just trying to help his son. And then the psychological effects when you come from prison, the aggression, right, the wanting to watch the whole room, to see how everybody is moving, all these effects that you don't really know you have until you come back. And parents had to deal with that. My dad was the one who told me, he said, knocked on my door and said, why are you always in your room? Because my room was so small, it was like the size of a jail cell. And that's where I felt the most comfort, right? And so it was him who had to say, okay, you got to come on out now. You got to start trying to get out and try to mingle and put your life back together. But the parents were extremely strong because they the ones who had to see their child leave, come back and become an adult, and then now he has these characteristics, and they don't know how to handle that. They don't know how to deal with it. So yeah, definitely it was rough for them.
I'll take yours.
Hi, Raymond. I just want to know, the police officers, what happened to them? Because I haven't seen the whole film, especially the blonde one.
We won't talk about her.
I know we don't want to talk about her. But I just want to know, is she still around? What's happened to her? Or did any of them get prosecuted? Or?
Well, no, because what happens is that prosecutors have full immunity when they prosecute these cases. And so the reason why they were able to be named in the civil suit was because that Elizabeth Lederer and Linda Fairstein acted as lead investigators. And so once they became investigators, they were able to be named in the civil suit. But besides that, they have full immunity. a lot of these police officers who were the elite of the police force, right? They were the Homicide North Detective Squad. They went on to retire, moved to Florida with their pensions. And we didn't really see some type of justice with them until we got to these depositions during the civil case, where we were able to dig up a lot of dirt on maybe 4 to 5 officers. But they never got prosecuted. So Linda Fairstein, recently, right, we know what happened to her, where all her stuff was wiped out and she couldn't sell any more books. And that's as far as it can go. Now, the only thing left was that we asked Cy Vance, who is the DA in New York, in Manhattan, to look into her case, her previous cases, and see what was the injustice that was done there. But he has refused to do it because they have a relationship. Like, they know this part of that good old boys club. And so other people have went and investigated cases, and they found, I think, 2 or 3 of her cases where there's some injustice done, but Cy Vance refuses to look at those cases. Yeah.
I should take the gentleman there and then you. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll come to the back next.
Raymond, again, I echo all the sentiments everyone's saying. Thank you for being here. Very important for me when I was watching was the relationship you had with your grandmother.
Yes.
And obviously, she was a very big part of your life. You then went into prison, and then the story kind of ended between you and her, so it didn't really fulfill what we were looking for in terms of that happy reunion. So wondering what happened there. And so the other thing was, we're actually the proud parents of 14-year-old twins ourselves, and we're kind of debating letting them watch this at the moment.
Yeah.
It's quite hard-hitting, but if they ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, as you were, and they fell into that situation, what advice would you give to 14-year-olds or the parents of 14-year-olds?
Well, as far as the series, I would say let them see episodes 1 and 2, because it deals with, police interaction, interrogation process, stuff like that, and then you can have that conversation, because the conversation really comes from you. We're just the tool or the medium that's used to reinforce what you're telling them. And we also ask parents to be educated. We ask parents to know your rights. You're the first line of defense for the kid if something happens. You're the mouthpiece that's going to save them. And that's your duty, right? So you need to be well equipped in this day and age. And so that's what we ask. We ask parents to know their rights, know the rules, know the procedures, know what you have to do, and then you relay that to the child. And as far as my grandmother, she was able to see me exonerated, right? And for her, that was the victory. She was like, everything else doesn't matter. You won. In my eyes, this is done with. But then, years later, she passed away. But she was able to see the victory. And before she passed, she was able to express how proud she was of me and the man that I become. I guess we gotta go to the back. Go to the back. Stay in the back for a while.
Yeah, you got it.
We don't want no problems.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say I'm really honored and privileged to be in the same room as you.
Yeah.
Wow. My question is, I know that when you came out on parole, that you went back in, is it once or twice, because it was so difficult for you to just, live a normal, regular life in society. What advice would you have for people who have actually gone into prison, jail, etc., who's come out? Because it will be difficult. It will be, to get jobs, to just live a normal life. What advice do you have for them? And also for us as a community, what advice do you have for us? And how do we treat these people who,
No, I get you. I understand. I mean, for the community first, we all have to realize that when somebody goes to prison, I mean, there's chance that they will come back. And we want them to come back with the tools to be productive, not on how to be a better criminal. So we have to look at that. We have to look at that as a whole, because that is a complex problem that involves all of us. And for the individual themselves, prison does teach you patience. it does teach you the whole, not to be so quick, not to give up, and you have to utilize those tools. It's not going to be that easy when you come home. It's going to be very difficult to get back on your feet. It's a process, and it's not going to happen overnight, so you definitely have to be patient. But the community itself, we have to embrace these individuals when they come back, because they're coming back to our neighborhoods. And how would you rather have a person come back? Do you rather have him come back with a set of skills that he can utilize to be productive and help the community? Or you rather have him come back with a different set of skills that he can start preying on the community? That's what we have to look at. And that's the part that we have to be more active in. Welcome them home, so that they can be productive and they can live a decent life. Yeah.
I'll take one more at the back, and then we go to that side.
Yes.
Hello?
What we got?
Oh, here. Yeah,
Okay.
Hi. I've got 2 questions. The first question is just talking about the timeline of when you went back in. You came out, you went back in. How long were you in for? What was the timeline for that? And then after you came out, how long until you got exonerated? That's the first question.
So for me, I came out in 1995, and I came out with an associate's degree, and I thought that I had all the tools to be productive. And then I was hit with all these new rules, right? 7 o'clock curfew, register as a sex offender, stuff like that. And then it was just a lot of pressure because everybody was watching me. So I had to walk on eggshells. I was the first one that came home from the jogger case. And so I caught a parole violation in 1996. So roughly about 10 months. And in that parole violation, I had owed about 2.5 years. And they gave me the whole 2.5 years, right? So I went on and I served about 20 months, and then I came back out. And then now, again, I said, well, I now have a little more experience of how this process works. I can try to do something and try to be, better. And I wound up getting a job, and the job was very tiring and very exhausting. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And nobody never sat me down and said, this is how you have to do it. This is how. My dad didn't know, right? He had a 10th grade education. So beyond that, beyond high school, he worked the same job his whole life. And so nobody sat me down and was like, this is how you do it. This is how you be successful. Be an entrepreneur. Learn a trade. There was none of that. There was none of that for me. And when I looked at the guy on the corner, he didn't have to fill out an application. Right? He just woke up one day and said, this is what I'm going to do. And he was successful at it. And I felt like that was the only option that I had. Again, it all succumbs to pressure. And I had a parole officer who was constantly on my back, who was an ex-police officer. So he was constantly on my back. And so when I got the drug case, that was around 1998. And I wound up serving 3.5 years. I was in my 4th year when Mateus Reyes came forward, so I was still in prison. And then we were exonerated in 2002. Yeah.
Can I ask a little bit more about that? Did you have a follow-up question to that? Carry on.
Sorry. Yeah, I had a follow-up question. It's kind of not related, so I don't know if you want to... okay. So my second question was basically, how do you rationalize or make sense of that this thing happened to you, and what is the life lesson that you've taken from it?
What is? I didn't hear the last part.
So what is the life lesson that you've taken from it?
Oh, I mean, I don't know why it happened. Like, all I can say is that somebody didn't do their job, right? Somebody didn't do their job, or this was business as usual for them. We became the story that became national, that became global now, that sheds the light on what happened to our youth and what continues to happen to our youth. And that's the only thing that I can get. I'm beyond why did this happen to me, right? Now I'm at the point of I'm taking it, it happened, and this is what we're gonna do next.
Okay, this one right there.
Hello, very nice to be in the same room of you sorry, let me start again. Nerves. Like, an absolute honor to be in the
Thank
same
you.
room as you. My question is a two-parter. Are you still angry for what you've been through? And if not, how have you dealt with the anger at the situation? Because watching it, it leaves my body trembling in rage. I'm so enraged
Yeah.
that you've had to go through that, all of you. How have you dealt with the anger?
I mean, like I stated earlier, like we have our days, but I learned how to channel the energy. And my mission was for those people who did this to us, for them to see us successful, for them to see us still moving forward, still winning, you know, creating families, you know, having jobs, putting out a series. Every morning that I woke up, I'm still constantly thinking about what can we do? Because every morning that they wake up and they cut on the TV and they see me on the TV or they see one of the five on TV. That's what it's about. It's about them saying, damn, they're on TV again? You got to deal with it now. This is the bed that you created, and now it's your turn to lay in it. Deal with it.
Okay, I want to ask my question. Let's have, okay, I'll just have you. I'm coming.
Actually, it's actually over here.
Okay, we got you.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. It's very compelling. I've been following you and the other men for some time now. I have two parts to my question. I'm just building on what you've just said. It's presidential election season in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the crime bill. Your case influenced the crime bill. A lot of what happened to you is because the system failed you. So if you were to prioritize one policy change in terms of criminal justice reform, what would be your suggestion? Because you have the whole world watching and a huge platform. What would be that thing is my first question.
Well, it's not just one solution. I have, like, when it comes to criminal justice, like, now you got states and countries that are legalizing marijuana. So what happens to all those people who have been convicted under that law? Right? You have to go back and right these wrongs, which the system doesn't do. 41 states changed their juvenile laws behind this case. Once we're exonerated, did anybody go back and change those laws? No. And so it's when it comes to the criminal justice system, it isn't just one solution, because this stuff has been running forever and it continues to run at full speed. And so now when we look at these candidates who are coming forth, we have to propose these questions and these demands. What are you going to do for us? Because at the end of the day, the Black and Latino experience has been that we have been put under these wheels of this justice. And so what are you going to do for us that you deserve our vote, right? And so that's another reason why we advocate to these young kids that marching works, protesting works, voting works, because it's a good old boy system. And if you come with 500 people, they might laugh at you. But if you come with 5,000 people, then they want to talk. And that's what it's about. So we have to unify and amplify our numbers when we come to them so that they know we mean business. Because if they don't, they just look at us like, well, you're just talking. We have to show them that we're serious. And so when it comes to the criminal justice system, I mean, where do we start? It's a lot. It's a lot when you look at these budgets that are implemented to build these prisons, right? Whereas it can cost you $40,000 a year to detain a man, and it could cost you close to $200,000 a year to detain a child, right? So what's going on here? But people have to see this. They have to open their mind and see what's really going on, and then come up with these solutions. And we have the power because we have the numbers. They need our vote. We don't need them. And we have a selection of people who want to be president, but they have to meet our demands in order to get our numbers.
Sladen Green.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat what everybody else said, but it is
fine.
honestly an absolute honor to be in the same room as you. And thank you to all five of you for being so brave to tell your story. Obviously, you spoke a little bit ago about the injustice and the effect that it's had on your life. My question is around whether or not you have found, like, creating this series and putting your story out and being that voice on social media, especially at this time when we see both in America, here in the UK, like the continued injustice. Have you found getting out there, telling your story, have you found that like cathartic, as a relief, as therapeutic in some way?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Every time I speak, I heal a little bit more. Me and Yusuf, we do most of the speak. We do a lot of speaking because it is therapeutic. It is great to sit amongst people and engage in a conversation because I get something from it just as much as you do, right? I might get a solution. I might get an idea, a thought, and I can go back and start working on it. So it's definitely therapeutic, definitely.
We need right now, because there's just so much injustice we see, and we don't even probably see half of what is actually happening out there.
Yeah.
But what we do see is very worrying, and for you guys to put what you're doing now on, and you've got that platform, for you to put it out there, it's the right time, so thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Appreciate it. You got one?
Take one question in the middle.
Hello?
Hello.
All right. Hello? Yeah, I'm aware you have a daughter, and I just want to know if she's watched it and what she took from it, because I understand that your family, some did believe that you did it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to know how.
You said my daughter?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. For me, I was fortunate because I didn't have to have the conversation with her. When the doc came out, thank you. When the doc came out, she was 8 years old, 9 years old. And she came to me one day in my dad's house, and she said, I know who the Central Park Five are. So I said, well, tell me who they are. And she went on to start summarizing the case. And I said, well, how do you know all this? And she said, YouTube, right? And I was like, that damn YouTube, like, because it robbed me of talking to my child about it. And then she said, also, I hear you on the phone. I hear mom on the phone talking about it. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So now when the doc is released, we go to the IFC Center because we used to do these talks afterwards. And she begged me, can I watch the film? Can I watch the film? Can I watch the film? And my cousin was there that day, so my cousin took her in to watch the film. So when she came out, she comes over, she's like, come here. And I said, what? She said, come closer. And I said, what? And she said, I didn't know you was one of the Central Park Five. So and then I said, so what do you thought? I was like executive producer or something? And she was like, yeah. And so that night, I'm in my bed, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and she comes in there, she's like, I want to sleep in your room. And I'm like, all right, fine. And she gets in the bed with me, and she wants to be extremely close to me now. And she goes, you know who I feel sorry for, Dad? And I go, who? And she's like, Corey, right? And I go, well, what about me? And she's like, you're my dad, you're all right? So I didn't really have to have that talk with her, but she kind of got it on her own. And then now being with her, and sometimes I take her with me, she goes on the road sometimes, and we go to these events. And in her mind, I'm a hero, right? In her mind, yeah. And it has established some credibility with her, where now she's like, I can go to my dad, I could talk to him about certain things. And I mean, it has eased my job of telling her stuff, because now I got credibility. So she just comes to me when she comes in from school, and she's like, well, guess what happened today? And I'm like, well, sit down, tell me what happened. And then she just starts telling me all this outrageous stories at school. And then we just have a great discussion about it, and she comes away learning something, and I'm like, wow, like, my job is really easy now. Like, I don't really have to, talk about the birds and the bees too much, right? So it works out. It works out for me with her. But she's a unique kid. She's very understanding, and she gets a lot really fast, And now, like, that's like my road dog. Like, she's like, where you going? I'm going with you. And I'm like, come on, She didn't want to come to this trip because she wanted to stay at my sister's house and hang out over there and have free time, because her friends live like right next door. So it was like, oh, I could go hang out with my friends this weekend. But if not, she would have probably been here. Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you.
I'd just like to echo what everybody said. It's an honour to be here. Congratulations on the Emmy nominations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
know,
Take that. Yeah. All 16. We'll take them.
It was just amazing. What I wanted to ask you was two things. First thing was, did you ever envisage that this was going to touch so many people around the world, your story? Did you ever think that it was going to go as wide and as big as it is?
No. I mean, we had some success with the doc, right? And I got to travel and go to Montreal and Toronto and attend several film festivals. But, you know, Ava said that it would, right? And that's another conversation that we had where Ava's always giving me advice, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, A, right? But she's always right. It always comes to fruition. And so I didn't think this big on this magnitude until it was Netflix. And then Ava was like 194 countries. And I was like, wow. But, you know, you think, okay, 194, we probably get 20 countries, right? And then when it comes to social media, and we start receiving all these messages, and in different languages, because I didn't have Google Translator, so when you text the message, I'll be like, English, please. And so that's when you start to see the reality of how big this has become, the magnitude and the lives that you touch all across the globe. And it's at that moment that it becomes a wow factor for me, that I'm like, wow.
Second question is, did you bring some T-shirts that we can buy?
No, I did not. I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not gonna have me coming through customs with another suitcase with thousands of shirts, and customs is looking at me, what are you doing? We need to test these shirts or something. Not I. That's not gonna happen. You can go on the website, Park Madison NYC. You can order, and we'll get it to you as soon as we can.
Okay, let's try this side of the room's question. We just have this woman and then at the back.
Hi, like everyone said, it's a pleasure and an honor to be in the same room as you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Netflix series was done so well. I was blown away. It's the best thing I've seen, just to be educated about what happened, and I could empathize with you guys. Well, see what you guys went through, and yeah, so it really is not a privilege having you here. I was wondering, I know you've probably touched on this already, but how your day-to-day thinking was when you first went away due to what you guys were put away for. What was your day-to-day like? Did you have any feelings of hope or a bit of wonder about will the truth come out? How can this happen? Or did you get, or like wonder if someone's gonna fight for you guys, or what can be done, or some sort of like hoping that the truth will come out? Or did you get really normalized to it, like, okay, it is what it is, this is because society is against us, we're just gonna, this is how life is? Like, was it hard to have that hope?
Yeah, no, it definitely. If you watch the doc, we talk about that in the doc, how our hope was crushed and our faith was questioned several times, because now it becomes a point, like, in the beginning, there's a lot of people that's fighting for you, and then that starts to dwindle as you go to serve your time in prison. And by the time you're done prison, there's nobody there besides certain family members. And so, for me, the hope was gone. It was completely gone, and it was just like, and that's the reason why I started going back and forth to prison, because I was so institutionalized by that point that I just was like, you know what? Like, this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I'm never going to be Raymond Santana, the childhood friend, or the cousin. I'm going to be, you know who that is? That's Raymond Santana, one of the Central Park Five.
Truth of who you are. You felt robbed of your identity, the truth of, like,
oh, definitely.
Society stole that.
Yeah, it was gone.
I like that now, like you said, it's like you guys are using your voice and really taking charge of social media. And do you kind of feel like now, like the way you described how you felt when you were a youth and that troublesome time, do you feel like now this is a time where the actions being made, like, on your, like, being able to use social media and having that voice that maybe before you felt so vulnerable and taken away from doing that, but now it seems like you're seizing that opportunity so well.
Yeah,
and so I'm really
definitely.
happy that you're doing that,
Thank
and you do it so well, so.
No,
yeah.
you have to. This is the time. This is the moment, and you have to try to make the best of it. And you have to try to like expand that moment. I mean, I tweeted not too long ago, and I said I hope that we don't become a trend, right? Because this is what happens. It's hot for a while, everybody jumps on it, and then when it starts to fizzle out, everybody moves on to the next thing. And then it's like, then there's an article written 5 years from now that says, what happened to the Exonerated 5? And we don't want that. We want them to know what we're doing and that we're continuously doing the work.
I'm trying to keep an idea of time. I think we probably can only take a few more questions. I don't know how much energy you got to keep going, Raymond. I think we've probably gone way fast. But there's a lady at the front here who's probably completely given up on me. Would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Raymond. My name is Avril, and it's finally nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
And like everyone else says, well done for surviving such a horrific event. My question is very simple. How did they choose the actors to portray you? Did they choose them to what you looked like when you were young, or what you look like now?
I know for
so
Ava.
we could recognize you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for Ava, she asked, she said, like, Ava's funny like this. So she says, Raymond, would you rather have somebody who looks like you, or would you rather have somebody that gets the job done? And I was like, nah, I want somebody that gets the job done. Because, I mean, he could, it's fine if he looks like me, but you guys can do makeup and all that stuff. If he can get the job done, then that's what I want. I want that narrative to be told effectively. And so I got to see Freddie's audition, his audition tape, and instantly, like, he went into my mannerisms, and I was just watching it like, wow, this kid is good. And then this is his first major role. So I like that also, because now I will always have a place in his heart as, what's your first role when they see us, right? And in the film, you see the love interest, right, is Aurora, who plays, she plays Tanya, and they wind up being a couple. They wind up having a relationship, and they still together to this day. And so, my selfish, but I'm like, listen, if y'all have a kid, I better be Godfather. Middle name better be Raymond. So, and they was like, oh yeah, it's done. If it happens, it's done. But Ava was, even in that process, we were able to watch the videos and help select the people to play in our roles. Yeah.
Question at the gent at the back, and then we'll come to you.
Yeah, so bring that mic over here. That's right. Come on. That's the
Yes, greetings, Raymond. Blessed.
No doubt.
I'm one of the people honored to have spent a little time with you before this, and the reasons we had so much synchronicity, so much resonance. I just wanted you to share one of the things that you shared with me last night, and that was on the subject of self-empowerment and self-realization and stolen childhood, and getting to that point where someone drops those tools of liberation in your lap. So if you could share that with the people, it'd be a blessing. And also, before I say that, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect you on your journey. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Definitely. So I was in Goshen Secure Center serving my 5 years, and I wound up getting into the college program. And in the beginning, I was on academic probation. I had like a 1 point, my GPA was bad. And I said, how can you go to prison and be on academic probation your first semester and almost get kicked out? And so I said, you know what, I gotta straighten up, I gotta wisen up, this is an opportunity that I can't let pass. And in that process, I had this professor, it was a Black Studies class, and the professor's name was Latif Islam. And big guy, big husky guy with a deep voice. And when he talked, the whole room went silent, because he was also an activist in Poughkeepsie, New York, which I didn't know at the time. And so when he first gave us the syllabus, And he said, these are the books that you're going to use for this class. But there was like 5 or 6, maybe even 7 books on the syllabus. And I said, well, damn, like, why we got all these books if we only used it one? And he said, because, young brother, this is going to be for your arsenal. He said, you don't know right now, but you will in the future. And I said, all right, that's fine. And so we got all these books. And it wasn't until I went through this class and I got my A that, that's right, I got that A. And, and so he sparked something in me, because then we found out that he was also in prison during the Attica riots. He was in Attica at that time. He knew some of the major players. And so he developed some credibility with us. And he was also a real activist. And his knowledge was just so deep that I started to go back and start to read these books. And it's in reading these books that I discovered who I was, who I am, and it unlocked my mind to understanding what happened to us. And that became the blueprint and the foundation to become the activist that I am today. Somebody who invested, who took the time and said, and he didn't know who we were. I'm not gonna say that. He didn't say anything. He just treated us as human beings, as individuals, and his duty was to equip us with the knowledge that's gonna help us later on in life. And that was empowering for me. And so these books were A People's History by Howard Zinn, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. Yeah, great books. Black Economics, Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, volumes 1, 2, and 3, which reading that helped me understand being a young kid, you know, being defiant against my parents and stuff like that. And that became the base. That became the base with, I went on to read more books and then kind of start digging into my case. Because, you know, when you're going through the process of being in prison and you're not really focused on your case, you just focus on getting home. But it made me go back and say, I need to know my case from front to back. I need to know everything involved in what happened to us and how did it happen. And so now when we filed this civil suit against the city and we get all these documents, I ask for copies of all these documents because I start to read just as much as the attorneys, right? And then I start to ask questions. And another thing was one of my attorneys, Roger Wareham, he always told me, he said, nobody can tell your story better than you. Nobody can tell your case better than you. So it's only right that you know it from the front to the back and from the back to the front. And that's my moment of becoming empowered, you know, with the knowledge that I have today, definitely.
Hi, sorry for my English, I'm French. So basically, my question is, after all of these years spent in the prison, do you, or even did you believe on the justice in USA? I mean, like, after what you've been living there, which was wrong, they put you in jail, and then do you think you can believe on the justice again, or did you believe anymore?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, there's supposed to be a system, right? We know that because there are some people who do crimes and they have to pay for the crimes that they commit. But we have to look at those who are in power within the system, right? In New York, the police department is given $3 billion, $3.4, $3.5 billion budgets. They operate as a small army because somebody's empowering that ideology that you have to be this way. And then as a result, they start to develop quotas. So you come in as a police officer, you have a quota. And if you don't meet your quota, then you're reprimanded and you're put in like the harshest parts of the city. They make your job hard, right? Because you're not fulfilling the quota. And so when you look at those entities and those agencies, we have to put people in there who's gonna change those policies. That's what it is. Because we want police, right or wrong, right? But we don't want police to just start killing us and shooting us for no reason. So we want them to uphold the law. We want them to do good old-fashioned police work. Solve crimes the right way. Don't cut corners. Don't cheat. And that's what the system does. So we have to take those people that are in power and take them out, and then put people that we select that we know is going to do the job. Because then they'll be open to our ideas. on how to improve the system. If we want people to come back from prison and be productive, then what are they going to do while they're in prison? What are the tools that we're going to give them to be successful when they come out? It's not just about punishment. It's also about rehabilitation. And prison has it has left that ideology because now it's about profit. And that's what it's about. It's about getting the biggest budgets to build the biggest prisons. And that's where we have to get those people that are in power, we have to get them out in order to put somebody else in there that's going to do the right thing.
Oh, wow, I can see 4
Hello.
hands.
Hi.
Oh, we've got some, I can't see who's speaking.
Hello, hello. Hi, sir. I just want to know if Ava received negative energy when she was making bad letters or...
Her mic is going in and out.
Hello, hello, hello.
All right.
Hello, hello. I just wanted to know when Ava was making the movie, did she receive any bad energy? Did she receive any kind of negative letters or anything like that? Were there forces who didn't want her to create this movie? And the second question, do you and the other gentlemen receive any kind of counselling or one-to-one still now after this time? Thank you.
The first question, from what we know, no, she didn't receive any bad letters, but just one person was Linda Fairstein. So when she went to interview Linda Fairstein wanted, like, she sent her this list of things that she wanted. Like, she wanted the script, she wanted to know the ideas, where it was going. Like, she really, she just made things difficult, right? And so that was the only person who really gave some type of resistance, just her. And then as part of your second question, as far as your second question, we never received any counseling. I think Antron is the only person who has stepped up, and he said that he's open to it, right? Because Oprah put a lot of pressure on him, right? So he said he's open to it. But the rest of us, like for me and Yusuf, I know we didn't, because we speak so much that it becomes part of our healing process. And so it was like, why am I gonna pay somebody $100 and something when I could just sit here and talk to you guys for free? Tomorrow is session 2.
Just gentleman there, and we are going to start winding up and just warning you. But of course, you can grab Raymond for a quick photo and let him rest tonight, okay?
Thank you. First of all, like everybody has said, we're all just surreal to be in the same room as you. This is kind of personal as a guy of mixed heritage. Watching the program, I thought, when I watched the program, I watched it in my living room, and I guess most people here watched it in their living room. It's the first time I've actually watched it with so many people, and it kind of, the energy filled the room. But what struck me was, at the end when we saw the real Exonerated 5 on the movie, and you came up, your eyes were full of compassion and love, as if you'd reached a point. And I just wondered how, in my role, I mentor young men, try to teach them how to deal with life. And I just wondered how you've got to that stage where really you seem more excited than you could ever be.
Yeah, I mean, for me, having my daughter, right, having Malia, it put everything into perspective. And it wasn't about just fighting for me now, it was about fighting for her, right? And so she has become the driving force. Her name is up on there. You see the tattoo, because now it's all about her, and it's about establishing the legacy and preserving the legacy for her, so that when she has her kids, she can say, this is who your grandfather, this is who he was. And that brings me a lot of joy, because we done did so much fighting. It's hard when you finally have one to still take the gloves off and hang them up. Like, they stay close, just in case I gotta still grab them. But she brings the hope for me. She brings the hope because now it's like I'm into like my second part of living, and I do a lot of living through my child, And so they're like, are you gonna have more kids? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm 44 years old. I can't chase a 2-year-old around, So I just do a lot of living through her, So she becomes the motivation for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Gentleman with the, okay.
Oh, you got one.
I didn't think someone would actually come to me. I was actually really scared to ask you a question, and I thought, you can't hear me? Hello? Sorry.
That's better, thank you.
I was saying I didn't think someone would actually come to ask a question because I was really scared, and I was thinking, why am I scared when you guys have gone through everything else? And I thought, why not? But obviously, I want to say big up to yourself, big love. I commend you on everything that you guys have all done.
Thank you.
What I did want to say is, how is the relationship now with your your family now after everything?
Oh, I thought we were going to duck that question.
I'm sorry. They should have asked me earlier.
Well, you know, my dad, he's been married to her going on 30 years. And so, you know, he was upset when it first aired. She was upset. But at the end of the day, that's the truth that she has to bear. Like, you know, it's the reality. Do I understand? I mean, because there's a dynamic that, you know, if you put yourself in her shoes, like, you know, I was struggling. I was out there hustling in the streets, and she didn't want that element in that apartment, right? And because my dad always supported me, she felt like, oh, you're going soft, like, and she felt like she had to get rid of me, you know? So there's a part that, a small part, right, that kind of understands, but it was another way that it could have been done, right? I mean, because now I went back to prison and it cost me another 3.5 years of my life, almost 4 years of my life. And so we never got over that, and we never mended that. We just tolerate each other because of my dad. That's just how it's gonna be going forward. But, you know, she'll still stick to her story, I'll stick to mine, you know. But my story's on the screen now. CBI. I don't know. I think we got to get this brother right here.
Yeah, because I think so too.
It's for the girlfriend.
Oh, we got to swindle on the crowd. All right.
Thank you. I have two quick questions. Hopefully they're quick. The first one, when the real culprit came forward, how did you feel towards him then? And do you, you know, and how are you towards him now? You know, have you sort of, I don't know, what the relationship is like now? And then the second one's more of on a creative side, but you could answer that one first.
All right, so with him, when he came forward, you know, I mean, we were relieved that somebody came forward, but there was also this element that we said they're gonna make him the sixth man, right? Because again, I was so institutionalized at that point in my life that I just was like, they're gonna make him the sixth man, and they're gonna sweep it under the rug, and they're gonna move on to business as usual. And I was really like that all the way until I got released. I mean, my lawyer, they would say, you know, call us, because I was still in prison, so I would call them, and my lawyer would say, we're gonna have you home before Christmas. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it because this case was so big, and they took so much from us that I felt like it couldn't be repaired. It was just gonna be swept under the rug, and it was gonna be moved on. And really, no actuality, that's what they try to do. They really try to make him the sixth man. There was an 8 month to a year-long investigation where they actually was trying to make him connect with us. And they used several different tactics to try to do that, but he held strong onto his story. And for me, you know, I'm grateful that he came forward, but this still was a man who was known as the East Side rapist, the East Side slasher, who committed 4 rapes and a murder, right? Who went on to give the police department 4 unsolved cases that they didn't know he did it, and then they went back and they found out that he did it. And even with that, he still had to prove that he was guilty. Like, that was unreal. And so even when we got to depositions, you know, Police Commissioner Ray Kelly, you know, in his deposition, Reyes was creditable for the 4 rapes and the murder, but he wasn't credible for the jogger case. That's unheard of, right? And so that's how deep those tactics ran, that they even, during the reinvestigation, you know, the police department said, we want to give you some, they told the DA's office, we're going to give you some extra officers to help you with the investigation, the reinvestigation, to uncover the truth. And then we find out that they gave them the Homicide North Detective Squad, just the younger guys, right, who were still part of the same entity who put us in prison in the first place. And there was one guy who was on the case from '89 who was there now in 2002, and he had a booklet. And in the booklet, we was able to get the copies of some of the pages, and he had 3 points on it, and one of them was connect Reyes to us. So this is the stuff that they were still doing in 2001, you know, where they were still trying to connect us to say that we were still guilty.
On the creative side of things, what made you go with yourself or Ava with a series as opposed to a feature film?
That was really Ava's idea, because at first it was a feature film, but then when Ava started doing all the research and she was gathering all the info, she said, you know, we have so much content that it's going to be too long for a feature film. Who's going to sit in the movie for 5 hours? That's a lot. And so Ava's idea was always Netflix. Netflix just didn't know it was their idea yet. And so, you know, because there she can be creative, they're not going to restrain her, and she can put out the best product that she can do. So when she came to us and she said Netflix, we were just waiting for Netflix to come on and say, yeah, we want to do it. And it happened.
So we'll take just a final 2 questions from people who've not asked questions before. So yes, have yours?
So obviously, thanks for being here. And also, what I was going to ask, I know you live in Atlanta right now, but would you ever move back to New York, or do you go there regularly?
I don't go regularly, and when I do go, I have a 3-day max, right? And it isn't New York itself, it's just me. I'm in a different place in my life, and Atlanta gives me that solitude, it gives me that peace, because I don't live in Atlanta, I live on the outskirts. So I'm like an hour north of Atlanta. And so for me, if you see the doc, I talk about being in my room, which was the size of a cell, right? And that's where I got my solitude. Now my house is that. My house is still that solitude where it's just peace and quiet, and I could be in my thoughts 24/7. New York is just too busy for me right now, you know. So when I do go, I have a 3-day limit that I can just stay that long. Because after that, all the noise gets to me, you know, all the yelling on the street and the sirens. So I can't take it too long, yeah.
Gosh, you guys are making hard. This lady over there.
Hello, thank you very much for being here. I feel quite privileged myself. I managed to get a ticket half an hour before you came. So thank you. You hit on the prison system earlier about you know, profit-making machines, etc., etc. In terms of Rikers, do you see a time when they will actually close it down? After everything that's going on, you know, we all know that it's probably one of the worst prisons going at the moment. I mean, apart from Attica back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you see a time when they will close it?
I believe so. I believe that Bill de Blasio, who's the current mayor, he wants to do that. But they first have to figure out how they're going to reduce the population. Because you have to, at one time, those facilities can house 18 to 20,000 detainees. And so, you know, they first have to figure out how they're going to reduce the population, and then from there finally close it, because that is built on an old landfill. And well, for those of us who have sat on Rikers Island, you can get sick just by breathing that quality of air. And so I think that eventually they will, unless somebody else comes in and they implement, you know, let's be tough on crime again, right? And that's what we have to fear, that the next mayor who comes in or the one after that is one that comes in and says, we want to be tough on crime, we want to improve quality of life, and then those numbers start to spike back up again. Because now we know where it leads to, right? It leads to booming prison population and getting those big budgets, yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's it, sorry.
So just to say, Are you going to be here long? Are you going to go into schools, or are you getting on the next flight out? What's your plans?
No, I'm leaving soon because I have to be at Duke University next. So, yeah, September for me is pretty busy. So I would love to stay, but I have to go. Plus, my child needs me, so I got to go home. But London is lovely. I mean, I had a great time. Where's Eugene? Eugene's here somewhere. I got to see some sights, and I got to take in and see culture and see the diversity, which I was extremely proud of when I saw it. I was like, wow, this is nice. You know? Yeah, definitely.
So even though I said we should be winding up now, that we take one more? How you doing?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you got
your
that brother
arm
right
must be
there.
so tired.
That arm, that arm in the back.
Must say it's an honor and privilege to be in the same room as you.
Thank you.
Having seen the documentary, the film, one of the things which struck me was after all you guys have been through, problems, your lives are taken away from you, the loss of your childhood, how did they arrive at the compensation of 41 million pounds?
How did they what?
Arrive at the compensation of 41 million pounds.
So basically, what they did was they looked at the amount of time that we spent in prison. And so we have become that one case that they say is an exception to the rule, right? And so for them, compensation was $1 million per year that you served, which was unheard of. And so in the beginning, we filed in the Court of Claims. And in the Court of Claims, they basically look at the time that you served in prison, and then they offer you some bogus amount of money just to shut you up. And so I think the offer was really low in the beginning, and then we came back and we filed on a federal level. And the reason why you filed on a federal level is because once the federal government comes in, the city cannot hold documents. They have to turn over everything. And now you have a way better chance to prove your case. And so once we was proving our case, because the city kept dragging their feet for 11 years, and so now we got to the settlement, we was able to demand $1 million per year. And so that goes on where people think, well, you got $41 million. And I go, hey, but you got to remember something. Lawyer takes a third, right? So I have to split this money with 4 other guys, and then we each have an attorney who takes a third. And then you got to take care of your family. You got to make sure that, and then you have to set yourself up. So by the time that's done, that money is really gone, right? It isn't what people perceive it to be. They think that, you know, you can go on and be set and live the rest of your life on the beach drinking Mai Tais, like Yusuf always says, and that's not the case. You know, you still have to get out here and hustle and grind and still fight, because it's comfortable, but the money really doesn't benefit me, it benefits my child. That's who I put the money away for, not for me, it's for her. You know, to give her a great opportunity to be successful in life. So, but that's how they came to the $41 million. Yeah.
So just as we start winding up, there is a little boy in each of you that you try to honor in different ways. You know, the kind of the boyhood that you lost. There are things that you do in your life now that just honor that and respect the fact that there's something you can still reclaim. Are you willing to share?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we're here, so. So when I established Park Madison NYC, and I created the Brotherhood T-shirt, and then I created the tribute shirt. So the tribute shirt was taking my mugshot and putting it on a T-shirt and honoring that Raymond Santana, because he's a hero in my eyes, because he endured and he was able to overcome. And so that shirt, in the beginning, when I first went to put the shirt out, a lot of people were skeptic about that shirt. You know, like, you know, you got your mugshot on the front of it, and you know, but I felt I had to do this. I had to, because Corey speaks about it a lot. When Corey goes out and speaks, he represents that young Corey. Like, he tells you, I'm here for that young Corey. Like, I'm here now to hold him down, to make sure that his voice is heard. And I felt the same way when I created the shirt. And so Park Madison NYC was created because I was always the sketch. I always loved the sketch. I always loved to draw. And when I went to prison, I lost a lot of that passion. And I tried several times to regain it, but I just couldn't. And so after exoneration, I was sitting there with a good friend of mine, and he said, well, you know, you won now, you got the money, you can go travel and see the world. And I said, I don't want to do that. So he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to regain something that I lost. I want to regain this passion. And that's how I started the brand. And then that's how I got to this point. Because in the beginning, I wanted to do something like a luxury line, but the public wouldn't let me do that. So they was like, we don't want that from you. You are Raymond Santana, one of, back then, the Central Park 5. So you have to give us content that tells who you are, right? That's how we're gonna connect with you through your brand. And so the Brotherhood was a perfect segue to do that. And then the tribute tee came after that. And then now we have a Corey Wise Power t-shirt that we released, which was, it's doing great. And for us, every shirt that's sold, Corey Wise gets a percentage of that shirt. It's not like we just keep the money, like he's getting something out of it. And so, I mean, for everybody who has purchased a shirt, thank you. Because there were a lot of people who doubted us in the beginning, even with the brand. And once it took off, now people are like, wow, they have their eyes on us and they watch us. And we get, I mean, it's so many celebrities now who wear the Brotherhood shirt. Sometimes I even come across IG and oh, okay, like I didn't even know they had a shirt. So it's honor, it's humbling to see that people have that much of an interest and that the story and the brand has impacted people that much.
And just finally, before we go, there's so much work that you've done in conjunction with the Innocence Project that everyone may not be aware of. Could you tell us about some of the strategic things that you've achieved?
Yeah, also with the Brotherhood t-shirt in white, a percentage of that goes to the Innocence Project also. Because we partnered with the Innocence Project, I think maybe around 2003. And so we have helped them put together reforms, you know, like now in New York State, the police department has to record the whole interrogation from beginning to end. It isn't now that you just get the finished product with a bow on it. You have to see the whole process. As soon as that person walks into the room, that tape has to start rolling. And another reform that we're trying to push with them is to bring outside agencies into those precincts so that when somebody gets picked up and your parents come, there's somebody that's there to help you walk through the process. Because 9 times out of 10, parents don't know, right? It's not like we wake up every morning talking about my son's gonna get arrested today and I need to know the law. So there should be somebody that should be there to help walk you through and give you some good, solid advice. Not somebody that works for the police department, somebody who comes in. And that's one of the reforms that we're looking at now to try to push that narrative.
Unfortunately, we are going to have to close and certainly give you, Raymond, some rest, and you know, the rest of us can come back and see him hopefully tomorrow. For those of you who've got tickets for the matinee, Raymond's going to be hanging out with us then, and also tomorrow evening. The matinee sold out, but there are tickets for the evening. Amazing short films from around the world talking about lots of different themes around fight for the future. So I hope you come for the films as well as to rub shoulders with Raymond. So yeah, please help us to spread the word. If you had a good evening, tell people to come. There are lots of other amazing stories and amazing filmmakers from around the world who are going to be with us to tell us these incredible things. Hashtag IWillTell, hashtag fight for the future, and hashtag IWillTell 2019. Take some photos with a backdrop and let people know that that they can have an amazing time. So without much further ado then, Raymond, for just, I mean, when they said yes, I just did a happy dance all over. It's like they said yes, because I'm always trying it on. I just didn't know you'd actually come. It's been such an honor to spend time with you. It's been phenomenal. He is the real deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.